Welcome to episode 6 of today's Candor. I'm your host, Barika. Thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to tune in. In this episode, I'll be discussing the concept of connecting and sitting with people who are committed to growth. You may find that episode 3 slightly resonates with this episode. If you haven't already tuned in to episode 3, please go ahead and do so. Long story short, episode 3 was about being and embracing your authentic self and doing away with the desire to fit in. So let's go ahead and dive into this episode. I want you all to think about and take a look at your circle. And of course, that circle may include close friends, family members, maybe coworkers that you've built a relationship with, your significant other, your spouse, whatever the case may be. Take a look at that circle. And there are two sayings that my parents and others, but my parents did so a lot, instilled these sayings in me when I was very young. And these sayings hold true to this day. Of course, there may be some variations of them depending on, where you were raised, your upbringing, your background, things of that nature. But the first saying is that you are the company you keep. And the other is that birds of a feather flock together because, of course, compatibility, similarities, things of that nature, right? So that's saying that you are the company you keep. It's not to say that you lose your individuality. It's not to say that you become your circle 100%. But let's just be honest. Who you spend most of your time with, who you may talk with a lot, we pick up on people's habits, antics, and their little nuances. It's inevitable. It's just human nature that we pick up on these little things, good and bad sometimes. And our mindsets, that can even be how our mindset is. If you find that you have a positive mindset, and you notice that your circle or who you spend most of your time with, that they have a positive mindset as well. Or let's say that you maybe didn't used to have that much of a positive mindset, but the people that you hang around, they do. And you've picked up on that. So that may have been something that you wanted to change about yourself. You wanted to become more positive and you worked towards that. That was part of your personal development and your growth journey. So we pick up on these different habits and antics of the people that we are around the most. So, as I've said before, take a piece of paper and write down what your circle or your tribe or your people, as some people refer to it, what does it look like? What are those people doing for you in the sense of, are they contributing to your growth? Are they stunting your growth? Do you notice some type of hindrance? And why is that? And when you're looking at and evaluating who you are around most of the time and just who you're connecting with most of the time, also look at how it, evaluate how it makes you feel. Evaluate how you feel and when you're at your best. Are you your best when you're around your family, your closest friends, your significant other? These things are important because it contributes to your world. It contributes to your energy and just your overall being. So it's very important to look at who you associate with, a pros and cons list of those people. So I like to think about friends or, whatever type of relationship, honestly. Friendship, a relationship, an intimate relationship. So a significant other, spouse, co-workers, colleagues, just people that you may network with. Look at these people. And I like to say that it's like a bank account. So we've all heard that, of course, when you are dating someone, for example, you're investing your time in this person. And this is very true. But look at any relationship that you have with anyone in your world, in your space that you spend a lot of your time with. And the reason I say look at it as a bank account, because you want to see if that person or people, if they are making deposits or are they withdrawing from you. And I'm not the one or two times, because, we all have our person or our people who they just need to lean on us at times. That's normal. But if you feel that a person is constantly pulling and tugging from you and draining you, when you hear people saying, I'm so drained by this person, or we talk about how sometimes our jobs drain us, or people at a job, that's withdrawing from your energy, especially if it's consistent. But if your circle is constantly, you all have it's a positive mindset, it's great conversations, it's, you feel that it's those people uplift you and vice versa and empowering you, then they're making deposits. They are adding to your world instead of taking away. So look at those relationships as a bank account. And what are those people or that person, what are they doing most of the time when they are in your company, when they are talking to you? Because it is important. A lot of people don't pay attention to, they think, oh, I'm just around people, so it doesn't matter. They think if they're positive, that they're invincible. But that's not how that works. You can be very positive, but if you are around a negative person or a person who is negative more often than not, that is tugging on your energy. It's taking a toll on you. Even if not in the very beginning, it eventually starts to just pull on you. And you start to clash with that person. Because if you're optimistic and that person is pessimistic, how can you even be around that person if it's constantly like a headbutt? And that brings me to my next point of outgrowing people, because sometimes we think that we start off with maybe our very close friends that we met, for example, in grade school, and we're going to ride with these people for the rest of our lives, or even if it's one person. And while that's great, and long-term friendships are beautiful, we can't take everyone with us. We just can't, because we outgrow people. And sometimes it's that they outgrow us. We have to face that reality as well. But it's a very tough concept to try to come to grips with and say, my very close friend from middle school or high school or college, whatever the case may be, we're no longer meshing. We're no longer as compatible as we used to be. We don't discuss the same things. We don't seem to connect like we used to, right? And it's not that there's something wrong, as far as it's not that other person may be a bad person that you've outgrown. It's not about that. But if you're always talking about leveling up and growing and just trying to further yourself, and the other person isn't on that same page, it's inevitably there's going to be a clash. So outgrowing is tough. Outgrowing our closest friends or just whoever is close to us, it just happens. And sometimes it's a matter of just going separate ways. And we have different goals. We have different journeys and ways that we're going to accomplish our goals. But I know for me personally, if I'm talking about what I need to do next in order for me to further who I am, whether it's who I am just as a person, or I'm trying to figure out how I can make more money. If I'm on that type of journey, and when I want to speak to someone who's very close to me, if they don't understand that, if it's always, oh, well, why are you trying to do that? Or sometimes it's that subliminal message that they're really not trying to hear that. They wonder why you're always talking about moving to the next level and doing the next best thing for yourself. But simply put, then we don't need to talk. We don't need to do this. I can check on you. I can make sure you're good. birthdays come around, all that cutesy stuff. But at the end of the day, if I'm on a different page, a different wavelength, and someone else is the opposite and it's negativity and complacency, there's not much I can do with that person. So there just has to be a change of scenery. And sometimes that journey has to be taken alone, because it may be that you don't have those close people who are trying to grow with you, or just grow, period. I always like to say some are very fortunate to have what they refer to as like a sisterhood, instead of it just being what they might refer to as friends or their friend circle, a sisterhood or a brotherhood, if you will, or just that tight-knit crew. Some are very fortunate to have that. And where they, their discussions are, of course, we are going to laugh and joke. But that's natural. We should be doing that. But just also discussions about, hey, what are we doing? How can we add another stream of income? Can we travel more? What's the next book we're reading to continue our growth journey? So if you're not able to have those conversations with the people that you spend most of your time with, that's something else that you have to take a look at. Because the laughing and the joking, we want to do that. That should be a part of life. It should be daily that we're having those great laughs, because we live in a tough world. But we also should be able to have those conversations about how we're growing together. Hey, this is my goal. What's your goal? Let's help each other. And so that brings me to my next point of maybe having an accountability partner. Sometimes just being able to have someone to hold us accountable. Sometimes people do it for working out. They might want to start a new fitness journey. Sometimes it's just maybe an overall better health journey. But having that accountability partner is helpful. And that may be your spouse, significant other, best friend, favorite cousin, and a lot of times when I've been reading or just listening to people talk about growth, a lot of them will bring up having that person that can hold you accountable. If not, being sure to hold yourself accountable. I know that when I thought about starting this podcast, I was writing down different things, writing down goals, writing down what I needed to do to make it quality. Just writing down different things that were important that I knew I wanted to have it in front of me, short-term goals, long-term goals, just a vision. And because I want this to help people, I want it to be something where people actually feel like this is their virtual safe space, if you will. And I knew once I started, my creative juices started flowing, and I started thinking about names for the podcast, topics, who I wanted it to reach, things of that nature. I also make sure that I'm holding myself accountable, because I want there to be an episode that's published weekly. So a few episodes ago, I knew that I needed to record. I needed to sit down and record and edit and get the next episode ready. I wasn't feeling great because of my allergies. Sometimes my allergies can flare up terribly, but I knew that if I could push through it, I just needed to push through it. That's it. So I took some allergy medicine. I took a nap. I said, because maybe that's going to help me just feel a little better. So I took a short nap, drank some water, took some allergy medicine, got myself together, because I didn't want to sound too nasally, and I didn't want to I didn't want to be sneezing and coughing and doing all these things. And once I felt a little better, I went ahead and recorded. And I played the episode back to myself to just make sure it sounded good. And it's just that I wanted it to be quality. I recorded it, and then I didn't like it. And I said to myself, take a break, maybe lay down for a second, take the allergy medicine, So I knew I had to take a step back from it. But I am holding myself accountable. I say all that to say I am holding myself accountable for the quality of my podcast. And I want these episodes to help people and reach people, especially people who feel that they just need that neutral voice and coming with a neutral perspective. So I'm holding myself accountable for how these episodes, the quality of the episodes, how they come out, things of that nature. I'm not asking for anyone else to do it. I know that it's important to me. This is my baby. I created this and I want it to be the best it can be. And I say all that to say, I am doing what I need to do as far as my growth journey. It's on Barika. That's how I feel about it. And I've been, I found a new book that I want to order. I believe it is on my Amazon, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. Live Them and Reach Your Potential by John C. Maxwell. I read another book by him. Right now, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I saw this book on Amazon and just the title caught me. So I want to read this. I'm going to order it, read it, and I think it'll just give me even an extra boost, if you will, of what I need. But continue to reevaluate just who you're around. I always like to say, I know when I'm at my best. I can pinpoint who in my life I'm at my best when I'm around these particular people. And there are sometimes I know that I have to turn a switch on because I may not be around. Look, let's just be honest. At work, I'm just going to give it to you straight. At work, there are people who I'd rather not. So I have to turn on a switch. It's almost just being able to block out because there are people who the growth journey, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about it. And you all, from episode 2, you all know how I feel about moving in silence. So I don't do a whole lot of that at work anyway, because I don't feel like it's necessary. I know who needs to know what, and that's very few. So just can make sure that you're evaluating who's around you, what you feel like when you're around them. Do you feel off? Do you feel like there's no longer a connection? Is the compatibility off? That growth. And growth sometimes is not always taken with friends or close ones. Sometimes that growth, I mentioned, not only is it taken alone, but sometimes it's just a matter of who you're networking with. Like if you're going to, let's say you're going to maybe different workshops or seminars, or let's even say you're, somewhere that's a fun event, like you might be at a cookout and you may be networking. And sometimes that's who you're taking your growth journey with. That you've met these people who are very much into similar things, whether it's hobbies or working on yourself, whatever the case. Sometimes it's about that. So, but don't be afraid. Connecting with people who are committed to growth, it's great, but don't be afraid if you have to take the journey alone, that personal growth journey, because sometimes that's what it boils down to as well. And when you start these types of journeys, whether it's growth, healing, fitness, better health overall, career moves, something else that you may want to change in your world, don't be surprised when you start to do those types of things. That's when you figure out who's coming along with you and who's not. It's not about cutting people off. It's just knowing who you can talk to, certain things, who you can talk to about those things, certain topics. We've all said we have certain friends for certain things. Some of your friends or acquaintances you may not talk to about relationships because they don't even know what they're doing. They can't figure it out for themselves. So it's like, why am I going to you if you don't know what you're doing? But when you start to go on these different types of journeys, or you start to really figure out who you are, whether it's soul searching, or, like I said, growing, healing. When you start to go through those types of phases and periods in your life, you really figure out who's in your corner, who you might even grow closer to, who you might outgrow. It happens. It happens honestly without you even thinking about it. It's not something that you even have to push for or figure out. Sometimes the minute that you speak about something positive, people run. They tell you to live in, that's not reality, or they're being a realist. There's times to be a realist, and there's also times to be an optimist. But human nature is that we go negative before we go positive. And when you start to go on these journeys and you feel like people are pulling away from you, let them. Why beg? Why beg for them to be in your world or in your company? They won't even understand what you're doing. So if I'm forcing you to come on this journey with me, or understand, even if you're not coming on the journey with me, even if I'm trying to force you to understand what I'm going through, what I'm dealing with, what I'm reading, what I'm doing, who I'm talking to, why? Why am I forcing it? I'd rather be around people who get it. Then it's not forced. So don't be afraid to take the journey alone or take it with different people. But I always say time will tell about a lot of things, but also time will tell about just who you are taking with you. And don't feel bad. Don't feel bad about furthering yourself and soul searching and diving in and figuring out who you really are, what you like, what makes you tick. You should want to further yourself. Complacency is not the end goal, or it shouldn't be. You should want to continue to grow. That looks different for everyone. So ask yourself, what does that look like? Write that down as well. What does my growth journey look like? And sometimes we're so caught up in New Year's resolutions, you don't need to wait until the first of the year to change something. When it hits you is when you should really start to think about it. When those thoughts come to you, it's not ironic. It's not a coincidence. It's for a reason. But write it down. Write it down. And start your journey and connect with the people on that journey who you need. Once you start, things start to come to you. Things and people, resources, things, people, they start to come to you. Or you start figuring out where you need to be, what you need to do when you start your research. I go back to when I wanted to launch I go back to when I first thought about I should do a podcast. And when it popped in my mind, I mentioned before in my story, when it popped in my mind the first couple of times, I thought about it and I was like, do I really want to do it? Why did I even overthink it? The overthinking is what stops you. That's a separate, totally separate episode. But I was overthinking what you're trying to, your goal or what you're trying to produce or what you're trying to do. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be quality. And we do the overthinking. So I overthought it and I was like, oh, I shouldn't do it because, there's too many out there, or there's this and that, all these things, right? Talking myself out of it, which was silly. But once I woke up and I thought about it again, I was like, okay, this thought is not popping into my mind for any reason. I started doing some research, started reading, started studying, just the launch of the podcast, the people who have the quality podcasts, what they're talking about, what they're doing, how did their journey start. And once I started doing that and started just looking into the different podcasters who knew what they were doing and what I needed to do, just different things started coming to me. My creative juices started to flow because I wasn't blocking it. And I knew I didn't need to talk to certain people about it, which in episode 2, I mentioned when I first thought about this, I only started, when I first started thinking about it, the initial thoughts, I only brought it to my man's attention. So I say all that to say, you will figure out who is and who's not going with you. It won't be rocket science. You will figure out who not only maybe wants you to grow, but wants to grow with you, who is saying, well, I want to do that too, or I fully support you in it. But if you are not committed, if you have people around you who are not committed to growth and you are trying to grow and you're sold on that, that's who you have to be around. No matter what the journey is and what you need will come to you. You will attract that. You will attract that. Or the people, the resources. So don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of it. And don't be afraid to do it alone if need be. But you're going to connect with those people that you need for whatever journey it is. And maybe share your story. So I'll go ahead and close with that. Before I end, I always say if you're comfortable in doing so, you can definitely leave. If you want to leave like a growth story, just a short story, by connecting with me on Instagram at Today's Candor. If you're comfortable just sharing your story of maybe how you were outgrowing people or just your growth journey and what you needed to do in order to continue or start it. If you want to share that, that's definitely welcome. And of course, as always, if you have any episodes or topics that you would like to hear me speak on and just give my candid, unbiased perspective, you can definitely leave those ideas in the comments and on my Instagram. Also, thank you so much for continuing to follow, like, and share. Of course, the podcast is on all podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more. You name it, it's on there. So continue to connect with me at Today's Candor on Instagram. Continue to follow, like, and share with everyone that you know. I appreciate your support. Until next time, stay safe and stay candid.